You dreamed of her mouth as sanctuary, but it was always a gate to exile. Her touch arrived like spring, warm, fragrant, inevitable. But you didn't notice the frost beneath her fingernails, the way her silence ripened your hunger, the way she never asked for your love, only waited for you to give it, until your hands were empty and trembling. She never lied, she just watched you build your own illusion, brick by brick, with words you thought were hers. Then one night, she whispered. You made it all up and smiled. Now you are alone, not because she left, but because you stayed too long in a place she never lived. You were not abandoned. You were revealed. What you called love was just gravity pulling your delusions inward until they collapsed. And what remains is silence, hers and yours. If this voice already lives in the bones behind your grin, let it echo, like the video. Leave your shadow in the comments. Subscribe and stay near the silence. Because you were never too weak for her. You were just strong enough to bleed where she couldn't. She never entered your life, she reflected it. From the beginning, her presence was a surface, not a substance. A ripple where you believed there was depth. She offered you nothing but space, and yet you filled it with longing. You mistook her silence for mystery because your mind was too terrified of its own emptiness. Her gaze did not invite you, it exposed you. You saw her and assumed she saw you. You spoke and believed you were heard. But she was not listening, she was letting you echo. You kept unfolding yourself, thinking each layer would bring you closer to her. Instead, each revelation only deepened your isolation, because she responded not with herself, but with your own voice, mirrored, distorted, returned. You thought it was love, but it was a loop. She was a glass hallway where every step forward was a return to yourself. You confessed your dreams, but they were already known to her, not because she cared, but because you offered them with such hunger that she had to accept, the way one accepts a wound by acknowledging its blood. She didn't pretend to love you. She simply watched you believe she did. You interpreted her glances as softness, but they were indifference measured perfectly to your sensitivity. When she smiled, it wasn't for you. It was for the role you were performing so obediently, the brave, wounded man desperate to be understood. You assumed she gave you her time. She didn't. She gave you the illusion of being worthy of it. And that illusion was enough to make you build a palace from every second she paused before replying. You studied her silences like scripture, extracted meanings from her absences, created altars from her indifference. When she looked away, you imagined her overwhelmed with feeling. When she looked at you, you believed you were chosen. But she wasn't there to choose. She was there to reflect. And you, drowning in your need to matter, mistook your own echo for her voice. You believed she was deep because you were too shallow to face yourself directly. She became your depth, your mask, your myth, and yet you never touched her. You touched the version of you that you thought she saw. That's what hurt, not that she left, but that you lost the only mirror that made you feel alive. Without her, you are visible again, and in that visibility, you are small, insignificant, forgotten. You chase her not to return to her body, but to return to that version of yourself you believed was finally worthy. That's the cruelty of her love, it never existed. And yet you became addicted to its absence. You worshipped her not because she loved you, but because she let you believe she could. You called her perfect not because she was, but because she gave you nothing, and nothing cannot contradict your fantasy. You said she understood you, but she never tried to. She only allowed you to unfold. You were the spectacle, the poet, the martyr, and she, the quiet stage on which you performed. You loved her because she never interfered with your illusion. You loved her because she never corrected it. And when she finally spoke, when her voice cut through your symphony like a blade, she said something simple, perhaps even cruel. And it destroyed you, not because of what she said, but because it shattered the architecture you built with your desperation. You looked in her eyes and begged for the man you became inside her to be real. But her eyes did not reflect. They absorbed. And then they closed. And in that closing, you died. Not the body, not even the heart, but the idea. The sculpture you carved from loneliness and fed with projection. You mourn her, but you don't know her. You mourn the mirror. You mourn the light that made your shadow look heroic. You mourn the God you became in her silence. But gods built on silence crumble at the first word. You did not want her truth. You wanted her to keep lying beautifully, to keep vanishing just enough for you to chase, to keep pretending you were worthy so you could ignore how empty you've always been. She didn't abandon you. She revealed you. She peeled away the illusions you mistook for skin. She stepped aside and let your myth collapse. And now you stand alone, surrounded by the ruins of a self no one ever believed in but you. If you feel hollow, it is not because she stole something. It is because she returned it. And now, without the mirror, you see what you always were, a man begging for reflection, not connection. A man more in love with how she made you feel than who she ever was. And still, you blame her. You call her cold, cruel, manipulative. But she never touched your mind. You offered it. She never promised love. You imagined it. She never betrayed you. You betrayed yourself by needing her to be more than she was. That's the truth you cannot swallow. That's the wound that won't heal. She did nothing, and that nothing destroyed you, because it forced you to see the one thing you cannot forgive, that without illusion, you have nothing to offer. And still, you crave her, not her body, not her voice, but her mirror. You want to be seen again through her absence. You want to be that imagined self, reborn in her silence. But silence does not resurrect. It only reflects. And the reflection is gone. Now, you must walk without image. Now, you must speak without echo. Now, you must breathe without witness. And if that terrifies you, good. That terror is the real you, the one she uncovered, the one no one claps for, the one who stands in a dim room long after the audience has left. You were not too weak for her. You were too fragile for the version of yourself she allowed you to believe in. And that version has died. Bury it, or wander forever, chasing a woman who was never there, only your face, flickering behind hers, begging to be seen. And if you hear this voice and feel it in your throat, don't turn away. Like the video, leave your shadow in the comments, subscribe, and remain close to the silence. Because somewhere inside, you know she never left. She was never real. Only the mirror, only the mask, only the whisper that finally made you scream. She never fed you love, she fed you hunger. A precise, quiet hunger, served in portions too small to satisfy and too specific to refuse. You thought her compliments were gifts, but they were invitations to starve with dignity. She never said she needed you, and that silence made you desperate to prove she did. Every glance became a ration, every brush of her hand became a feast. She made you beg with your silences, not your words. You waited for her messages like a man waits for morphine, not because it healed, but because it delayed the collapse. You mistook that delay for care. But care does not starve you. Care does not tighten its grip just to watch your pupils dilate with longing. She never smiled to comfort you. She smiled to test the leash. And you barked so sweetly, tail wagging in the ruins of your pride, because even her crumbs felt holy. You told yourself she was distant because she was complex, but deep down you knew she was distant because it made you crawl. and crawling made you forget you used to walk. She trained you without touch, taught you to anticipate pain wrapped in pleasure, taught you to lower your voice so she could raise hers without speaking. She didn't seduce you. She rationed herself like a queen during famine, just enough to be worshipped, never enough to be touched. And when you called her generous, you were really praising your own obedience. The less she gave, the more you tried to deserve it. You became an animal with manners. You bled in silence, hoping your stillness would be mistaken for strength. But she knew, she always knew. That's why she never said thank you. That's why she never acknowledged the 1,000 invisible offerings you laid at her feet. She understood the hunger better than you. She knew it wasn't for her. It was for meaning, for validation, for a single drop of yes in a desert of maybe. And that's why she withheld it, because giving it would end the ritual, and she needed the ritual more than your love. She needed to see you perform, to ache, to offer, to pretend your dignity was intact while it bled from your teeth. She was not cruel, she was precise. Precision is colder than cruelty. Cruelty enjoys your pain. Precision only requires it. She needed your hunger to shape you, to sculpt the man she wanted to be seen beside, not the man you were, but the one you could become through starvation. She did not want your presence. She wanted your potential, not as it was, but as it suffered. And the more you suffered for her, the more valuable you became. Because pain creates worth. That's what no one tells you. That's what she understood. She didn't want ease. She wanted proof. She wanted to see how much silence you could survive before collapsing. And you collapsed beautifully. With grace, with poetry, with self-pity disguised as devotion. You told yourself she was the only one who saw you, but you never asked what she saw. You assumed it was your soul, but it was your ache, your performance, your willingness to break quietly. She did not crave your strength. She craved your collapse. Not the loud kind, the elegant kind. The kind where you still hold the door, still send the message, still say I understand after 3 days of silence. The kind of collapse that calls itself patience. The kind that clings to hope like a rope around the neck. Smiling, and when she smiled back, you mistook it for rescue, but it was approval. You were starving correctly. That's what she loved. Not you, not your essence, but your obedience to the suffering she designed. You ask yourself now, was she evil? But that's too easy. Evil has intention. She had instinct, a wild, feminine instinct for control through withholding, a power not in presence, but in absence. And you gave her that power gladly. You put it in her hands and begged her not to drop it. You sang to her emptiness like it was a temple, and she let you, not because she wanted your song, but because it made the temple echo, and the echo made her feel holy. You weren't her lover, you were her ritual, her daily proof that she could be worshipped without offering, her evidence that hunger is more addictive than satisfaction. And now, when she's gone, you still wake up starving, not for her, but for the pain that felt like purpose, for the ache that gave your days a shape. You miss being tested. You miss the way her coldness sharpened your identity, because without her rejection, you are undefined. That is the truth that kills you, not her loss, but your shapelessness. You became someone in her absence. Now, without it, you dissolve, and in that dissolution, you call her names: narcissist, manipulator, siren, but these are screams from a man who misses the leash. She didn't tie you. You knelt. You handed her the collar. You wagged your hope and called it love. And now that she's gone, you wear your scars like medals and expect the world to salute. But no one claps for the man who lost himself in devotion. No one honors the one who broke beautifully. And so you keep returning, not to her, but to the hunger. You scroll through her pictures not to remember her face, but to feel the ache. You read old messages not for content, but for context, the pauses, the delays, the perfect cruelty of seen. You miss the ritual of waiting, of hoping, of begging in silence, because that pain was yours. It belonged to you, and now that it's gone, you have nothing, no purpose, no image, no altar, just a man alone with the memory of a hunger that looked like love. And if you feel this truth wrapping around your chest like a chain, do not resist. Like the video, leave your hunger in the comments, subscribe, and return to the silence where your ache still echoes, because she was never affection. She was the absence that made you believe it, and you were never loved. You were always starving. She crowned you not because you were worthy, but because she needed someone to burn. It wasn't your glory she admired, it was your flammability. You stood tall, proud, believing her gaze meant reverence, but it was inspection. She wasn't looking at your strength, she was measuring how easily it could turn to smoke. And when she smiled, it wasn't out of awe, it was calculation. She knew that every man dreams of the throne until he realizes it's made of ash. You sat on it anyway, mistaking the heat for passion, mistaking the weight for purpose. She applauded you as you rose, not because you impressed her, but because she had seen this play before. Different actor, same firewood. You were noble in your suffering, poetic in your restraint, and so certain that your loyalty would redeem her silence. But she did not want redemption. She wanted drama. She wanted the grand finale, the collapse of a man who thought himself untouchable. You called yourself her king. She called you amusing. And when she placed the metaphorical crown on your head, you mistook the gesture for intimacy, not prophecy. You thought the rituals meant permanence. You thought her attention meant territory. But you were not ruling beside her. You were being prepared for execution. The words she offered you, rare, precise, glowing, were not love letters. They were accelerants. She needed your ego to rise before she could delight in its descent. And rise it did. On the back of compliments she never repeated. On the stage of performances she never asked for. You built kingdoms in her pauses. You built futures in her nods. And all the while, she was sharpening the moment she'd step back, let the light shift, and reveal to you that there had never been a kingdom, only a funeral pyre with a velvet cushion. You burned perfectly, because you had rehearsed for years, every moment of kindness, every small reward, every flicker of approval became your religion. You learned to preach your worth in the language of devotion, and when the silence came, the final, irreversible silence, you called it tragedy, but it was design. It was the ending she choreographed with exquisite indifference. You mourn her like a widow, but you were never married. You grieve like a dethroned ruler, but there was never a crown, only the illusion of one, molded from your desperation to matter. She didn't take power from you. She revealed that you never had it, that what you called love was theater, what you called loyalty was self-harm dressed in roses. She never needed your empire, she needed your fall, because watching a man fall confirms the height he believed he had, and that belief, not the fall, is the real offering. She collected your confidence the way a butcher collects hides, not out of malice, out of craftsmanship. You see, she didn't destroy you to feel strong. She destroyed you to feel nothing. And you gave her that nothing in its purest form, a silence so absolute, it erases your name from your own mouth. You try to speak now, but the words catch. Because what would you say? That you loved her, that she betrayed you, that she owes you closure. These are the cries of a man who built his identity on borrowed light. And now that the sun has turned, he blames the eclipse. But the darkness isn't hers, it's yours. It was always there, beneath the illusion. She just removed the chandelier. You see ghosts now in every woman's eyes, the same calculation, the same cool stare. But it's not them you fear. It's the echo of your own ruin, still smoking. You wake up at night and check for the crown, but it's gone. Or perhaps it never existed. Perhaps it was made of wax and burned with the first lie you told yourself that your love could make her real. She was not the queen, she was the match. And you regal, trembling, loyal with a cathedral of dry wood, begging for fire. And now there is no throne, no audience, no kingdom, only ashes clinging to your fingertips like accusations. You try to wipe them away, but the more you touch, the more they cling, because they are not remnants of her. They are remnants of the man who needed her to feel alive. And that man, crowned in fantasy, died without a scream. He died with a whisper, a realization that he was never seen, only used as fuel. And yet, you return to the memory, to the echo, to the stage, scorched and hollow. You play the moment back, searching for a line you missed, a gesture that meant something else. But there's nothing, just smoke, just dust, just the shape of your old pride dissolving in her absence. And still, you want to believe that she once meant it, that some part of her mourns you, but she doesn't, because she didn't lose anything. You did. You lost your illusion, your myth, your sense of self sculpted around her silhouette. You were not a man to her, you were a flame, and she, like all cold things, enjoyed the warmth without ever stepping too close. And when the fire dimmed, she walked away, not because it hurt her, but because it bored her. You were beautiful in pain, but pain is a performance, and performances end. Now you sit alone among the ruins of your imagined empire, and still you speak of her like a god. But gods do not apologize, they do not explain, they do not return. They disappear, and in their silence, you must choose rebuild with your hands or continue worshipping the smoke. If this voice still burns in your chest, then speak to the fire. Like the video, leave your crown in the comments, subscribe, and let the ashes teach you what glory never could. Because in the end, there was no throne, only the man who thought there was. The crown still smolders in the corner of your memory, but no one dares touch it now. Not even you. It sits where you left it, glowing faintly, whispering songs in a language only ruin understands. The wind moves through the room like her breath used to, brushing past your skin with the coldness of recognition. You thought she was the story, but it was always the silence after. The throne was ash, the mirror was smoke, the hunger was yours, and still you kneel, not from loyalty, not from grief, but because your knees remember the weight of performing divinity. You hear no applause, only the echo of your own footsteps leaving again, hoping next time you'll be seen. But the stage is empty, the curtain never rises, and somewhere deep inside you already know the fire will wait for you to forget.